Unless you were really, really lucky, you probably had the same experience I did growing up. Roast chicken that looks great on the outside, but is dry as sawdust on the inside.
It's true, roast chickens are notoriously bland and dry. The problem, as is often the case, comes down to some basic physics, specifically thermodynamics.
I'm Kenji Lopez-Alt.
And I'm Katie Quinn, and on this episode of the Food Lab, roast chicken.
Why don't we begin with the basics? What exactly happens when chicken cooks? Well, under 120 degrees or so, the meat is still considered raw. Muscles are aligned into long, straight, cable-like fibrils that are wrapped in a sheath of elastic connective tissue, and this is what gives meat its distinctive grain.
Between 120 degrees and 140 degrees, proteins in the meat begin to coagulate, squeezing moisture out of those muscle cells and into those elastic sheaths. Think of them kind of like long tubes of toothpaste.
Tubes of toothpaste filled with coagulated chicken juices.
Above the 150 degree range, those protein sheaths contract, squeezing out their contents.
And just like with a tube of toothpaste, it's pretty much impossible to get those juices back in. This right here, this is chicken that's been cooked to the government recommended level of 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
A chicken breast will lose upwards of 25% of its weight in moisture at those temperatures.
Yeah, overcooking is the #1 source of dry chicken meat, which is why your chickens should always go hand in hand with a thermometer.
We like the quick response thermometers like this ThermaPen or its cheaper cousin, the ThermaPop.
Right. So long as your chicken never comes above 150 degrees, it's gonna be way juicier than anything my mom ever made.
But didn't the government recommend 165 degrees so we don't all die horrible, painful deaths?
Food safety is way more complex than just a single number. The reason we want to cook food to 165 degrees is so that we kill any of those tiny, microscopic, teeny tiny bad guys on top of our meat. At 165 degrees, this happens instantly.
But that's not the whole story. Raining down death and destruction on bacteria is a function of both temperature and time. Take a look at this graph.
This graph was drawn directly from USDA data, and it represents the amount of time it takes to pasteurize chicken at various temperatures. Up at the 165 degree mark, it takes about a second to achieve a 7-log reduction in bacteria. That means that only 1 out of every 10 million bacteria can survive that.
At the 140 degree mark, it takes a half an hour. And down at 150 degrees, it takes only 4 minutes.
So that means that as long as the core of your chicken comes up to 150 degrees, you take it out of the oven and you let it rest for a few minutes on your countertop.
Which you should be doing anyway if you want your chicken to stay juicy as you eat it.
It's gonna be just as safe as if you cooked it to 165 degrees and a heck of a lot juicier. Brining is the act of soaking meat in a saltwater solution, and it's been used for thousands of years by the Chinese and the Scandinavians. Let's think of our chicken as a mop. Some chicken juices. And there we go, there's our chicken.
Yep, it looks exactly like a chicken. Now remember, as our chicken cooks, the proteins contract, squeezing out moisture.
That is dry chicken. Now, let's see what happens when you brine it.
Brined chicken, on the other hand, has a weaker protein structure, so less moisture is expelled. The chicken's still fully cooked, but it maintains its juiciness.
But there's a problem with brined chicken, and I want to tell you the truth, I never, ever do it. So yes, the brining is gonna make your chicken juicier, and more importantly, that juice is gonna stay in the chicken as it cooks, but look at what you're adding.
Plain old water. Yeah, water's wet, but it's also bland as heck. So your chicken's gonna taste watery. With dry brining, you skip the liquid element altogether. All you do is generously salt your meat a few hours in advance of cooking.
At first, that salt is gonna draw liquid out of the chicken in a process called osmosis. Look at this. You can actually see the liquid beating up on the surface of the meat. This may seem like a bad thing, but once that salt dissolves in the extracted liquid, it ends up forming a super concentrated brine. Eventually, that brine will break down the chicken's muscle structure enough that it can get reabsorbed. going right back into the chicken and taking some of the salt with it.
So what we have here is a chicken breast that acts like it's been brined. It has a loose muscle structure, so the juices aren't pushed out as forcefully.
That's right, a dry brined chicken breast is going to lose about 40% less moisture than an unbrined chicken breast.
And at the same time, its flavor is completely undiluted.
Best of both worlds. We know how to keep chicken breasts nice and juicy, but we still have the million-dollar question. What is the best way to roast a chicken?
The problem is that chickens just aren't designed to be roasted.
What makes it even worse? One of these guys. Now, you've all seen these before. You take your chicken, you tie up its legs, you pop it into the V-rack, and then you throw it in the oven.
See the problem now? That tender breast meat is exposed to the heat of the oven, while the legs are underneath, protected.
Right. This is the worst possible device for roasting a chicken. It's pretty much impossible not to overcook the breast meat in one of these. Get rid of them.
So how do you get your chicken to cook more evenly, cook faster, and taste better all in one fell swoop? We just flatten it out. It's called spatchcocking.
Butterflying your bird gives you 3 major advantages. The first one is that a flatter shape means more even cooking. So the thighs and the drumsticks that used to be the most protected part of the bird are now the most exposed. They also lie flatter than the breasts, which means that they cook at a faster rate.
And this is exactly what you want in order to get the breast meat and the legs to reach their ideal temperature at the same time.
The second advantage, all of the skin is on top.
And flattened chicken exposes its skin evenly to the heat of the oven, allowing for plenty of escape routes for that rendered fat and liquid, ensuring that the skin comes out crisper and tastier.
The third advantage, a flatter shape also means faster cooking. You see, a regular chicken is roughly spherical in shape, and that is the worst shape geometrically if fast and even are your goals. I mean, you could pump up the heat in the oven, but then by the time the center of the bird is done, the outside is going to be overcooked.
A spatchcock chicken, on the other hand, lies flat, ensuring that the whole thing cooks evenly in about half the time.
You convinced yet?
Good. Here's how you do it.
Start by flipping your bird onto its stomach so its back is up. Then you're going to take your poultry shears, cut along either side of the backbone, getting through that joint in the thigh. Continue all the way up.
And remember to save that backbone for stock or gravy later on.
We're gonna push down on its breastbone until it gives a little crack, just so it lies flat.
And then generously season it with salt and pepper. Then transfer it to a wire rack on a foil-lined rimmed baking sheet. Then stick it in the refrigerator for at least several hours, or preferably overnight for the dry brine to take effect.
The next day, when you're ready to roast it, crank the oven all the way up to 500 degrees and then throw that whole chicken right in there.
Once it reaches 150 degrees, about 45 minutes later, here's what we've got.
Katie, shall we?
Let's.
So remember, the next time you're roasting a chicken, brining and V-racks,
Strictly for the birds.